Hello, welcome back to Animalata Corner, where I bring you the latest cult of Scientology news and possibly other cults as soon as I get somebody in my chat that would give people choices of stories that they want to hear. I will also have trivia as soon as I get people, and I'll bring you other activities besides telling you cult stories and Scientology cult stories. But from now today, I'm going to have to, redo all my stories because of what happened 2 weeks ago to this date. This story is about Scientology's tax-exempt status. So let's get down to it. Now, Scientology has about 150 organizations here in the United States since its existence. Not only that, they would also have tax-exempt status here in the United States in Section 501. The Internal Revenue Service, also known as IRS, and other government entities sees them as a religion because of that status. Legally, they are a religion on paper, but Scientology isn't really a church. Scientology might be a religion on paper, but spiritually, they are not a church. They're only a church on paper when it comes to taxes. That's the only way they are seen as a religion. They're only like that on paper. Scientology first gained their tax-exempt status in 1957 in California. The organization would pass themselves off as nonprofit. The commissioner had Scientology identified as a charity. Then 11 years later, Scientology had their tax-exempt status revoked. They took it away due to the fact that L. Ron Hubbard was using it to line his pockets. Then when the 90s rolled around, David Miscavige had a letter campaign to try and get the tax-exempt status back. When they would declare war on the IRS, Scientology was really fighting dirty by using the usually fair game tactics. Then one day, the IRS was so exhausted, they threw in the towel and gave up fighting Miscavige. Then Miscavige and the organization went as far as lawyering up, meaning they had attorneys behind them. When it came to going against the federal government and law enforcement. Then one day the IRS was exhausted. They just threw in the towel and gave up fighting Miscavige and Osa. They would let power, money, and grade dominate his life while in the criminal organization by crippling the IRS into giving them their tax-exempt status back. After Scientology got back their tax-exempt status, they started to use that status for the wrong purposes. They would use it on private investigators to go after their victims and high-priced lawyers to either get out of getting in trouble or delay any kind of court proceedings. Then they would also use it to pay street people to go after their critics and try and beat them up. Then they would also give police departments a huge check during one of their fundraisers. According to Aaron Smith Levin, after Miscavige would give himself a six-figure salary and give everybody else $47 a week, $47 a week. But sometimes they would get nothing. But ultimately, there is a way for their exempt status should put to there's a way for their tax exempt status to be taken away from them. Write to your local government, write to your local government by going to SBTV space, and there would be a government link. Then click on that link at the state you're in. Then ultimately Scientology will always be money laundering cult and not a religion. Well, money laundering, human trafficking cult and not a religion. Nevertheless, the organization won't pass. The commissioner won't see them as a charity. Then one day, the IRS won't be so exhausted and they will refuse to throw in the towel and they won't give up fighting Miscavige. So David Miscavige won't use it to buy cars, motorcycles, or use it to go on a shopping spree anymore. This is the conclusion. In conclusion, Scientology will ultimately finally get their hearing in consequence. They will hold a hearing whether or not they should keep their tax-exempt status. Now, what do you think? Should they keep their tax-exempt status? I think so, because you know what? They do not take proper care of their tax-exempt status. They use it for the wrong purposes. They use it on high-priced lawyers, like I mentioned in the story, and private investigators to go after the victims and delay court proceedings. And they've been doing it to the protesters in California, in Los Angeles. They want to delay. But guess what? The protesters end up winning because of their free speech. So there's a good part in this story. Scientology keeps losing in the courts with their critics. That would include protesters. So with them, it's always delay. Or they threaten a lawsuit with journalists claiming it's a false story, when in fact, it's true. So, delay there, but some of these outlets are more powerful than Scientology. So they don't really cave in. So all they do is threaten. And they continue on to this day with their tax-exempt status. They've been buying up politicians, police departments, as I read it in my notes. They just have it for the wrong purpose. Other churches don't. They don't use it. The normal churches won't use high-priced lawyers or use money to hire private investigators to go after their victims, or street people to go after and beat up their victims. They don't do that. Real churches don't do that. So, and at the end, they're going to get their just desserts, but it's going to take maybe, forget it. It's going to take 10 years. We're not going to see any time their tax exempt status taken away anytime soon. I hate to tell everybody. I really want to be wrong on this issue with them and their tax exempt status, but I'm right. We're not going to see anything done, especially with Trump in office. And his attorney general was put in jail for using funds for the wrong purposes. And of course, Trump bailed her out and said, you know what? I'm going to let her walk. So he granted it to her. And she's usually behind Scientology's pocket. They would use it for campaign purposes to pay for a politician's campaign. That's what they also use their tax-exempt status for. So they can just turn around and do whatever they want with it. And the politicians will just as easily look the other way and not say anything. That's what they're using their tax exempt status for. So forget seeing them get their tax exempt status taken away from them within this 4 years that Trump's in office. It's not going to happen. Even though he claims to be a Christian, even Christians do something wrong. Everybody does something wrong. Even the greatest person in the world does something wrong. But Trump, he was never that great anyway. And he got his hands caught in a cookie jar when people found out one day that he was really a bully and not a nice guy, especially with the technology around. So just forget that they're going to get their tax exempt status taken while Trump's in office. There's no way. But however, everybody is fighting tooth and nail, the former Scientologists and the young children, well, the adults today who used to be a child in the organization in the earlier is trying hard to try and get their tax exempt status taken from them, but they're going to continue to fight, and I am going to be in their corner the entire time, and I'll tell you all the stories about that. So just look forward to that. And they went to all the commissioners' meetings. Even the people who weren't in Scientology are going and fighting for everybody that's in Scientology, including young children who are very vulnerable at this state. Because children are always vulnerable. The younger they are, the more vulnerable they are. And it's because of their parents that put them in that situation. And it's really them that did this to them. And every time child services get involved, they get away with it. The majority of the time, they get away with it. I don't think they work hard enough to get those kids out of situations that way, because they use children as labor. And they don't care how old they are. Forget the adults. Even though, yes, they're treated as slave labor, they get paid only $50 and then wind up with $47 after taxes. But I don't think, well, some of them are, well, they're brainwashed, period, by Miscavige to believe that they're a charity. And they have him working these long hours and then have them work in his household to clean his house, make his meal, cook his pancake breakfast, all while they're working 10 to 15 hours a day. That's his gravy train. So we're going to have to take that gravy train out of his household. We're going to have to take his free meal ticket away from him, because that's what he's using the money for. His own purposes. We got to get that gravy train away from him somehow. And then take all the money that's in Scientology and give it back to the victims, because they were slaves all these years. And the celebrities themselves, some of them use it. Look at Tom Cruise. David Miscavige is Tom Cruise's best friend. He gives him that slave labor, and he takes advantage of the slave labor. He don't pay them. In the words of, according to Natalie Webster, he doesn't pay them. And he doesn't care to either. And John Travolta, I heard somewhere that he does it the same thing. Only he's a nice guy. Even the nicest person, like I just mentioned, can do something wrong. Anyone can. But then, you know what? At the end, eventually, somewhere down the line, maybe not while we're alive, somewhere down the line, maybe we'll see it when we're alive, they'll get their tax-exempt status taken from them. And they will never get it back again. Are they going to still continue to be a religion? Only if they go underground. Otherwise, once they get their tax-exempt status taken from them, that's the end of the religion, on paper anyway. And we won't see them as a religion ever again. Well, that should do it for that story. See you in a bit.